Flowing quietly through England is a river of the purest nature, unbelievably clear waters, absolutely teeming with life. But sadly, like most naturally beautiful places, there aren't many of them. Not just because of the difficult history that shaped them, but by design, requiring a truly unique set of factors in order to even exist. This is one of the rarest rivers in the world. But these habitats, they are really special places, and it's not one which we've covered here on Leave Curious just yet, so I am very excited to bring them to you today, and I am looking at a pretty big fish just here. But unfortunately, my real motivation in making this video isn't just the sort of whimsy frolicking in nature. While it is going to be a little bit of that, there's also a pretty pressing matter which I think it's about time which we discussed here on Leave Curious. So what we're looking at here, this beautifully clear water, this is known as a chalk stream, and there are less than 260 of these in the world, and the UK has around 90% of those chalk streams. Now, unlike the majority of rivers which are fed through, say, runoff or through snowmelt, chalk streams are fed through springs. This water is bubbling up through hundreds of meters of chalk bedrock. I think we all know what chalk is. It's that white soft rock, but how exactly is it formed? Because it really is quite fascinating. So chalk is the compressed remains of tiny marine plankton called coccolithophores. The coccolithophores, I think I'm saying that right. They're teeny tiny microscopic calcium carbonate shells. They sank to the bottom of the sea floor and they built up over time, and that's what gives us the chalk which we have today. Kind of hard to wrap your head around, but how do we go from teeny tiny prehistoric shells to this beautiful river which we see today? Well, that's to do with how the chalk interacts with rainfall. You see, the chalk forms these aquifers which hold and it stores the water until it's forced and it bubbles up, and it feeds these streams pretty consistently throughout the year. And because they're not fed from runoff, you get this beautiful clear crystal water flowing continuously, which has, all of the building blocks for life. So where have I come for this video? Well, I've come to the River Itchen, which is part of the South Downs National Park here in Hampshire in southern England. And because the UK has the majority of the world's chalk streams, I hope to visit more of them across the country soon. So for this first video on chalk streams, I thought it'd be pretty appropriate to talk about renunculus. Now, this is an aquatic plant. This is a keystone species of chalk streams. It really does offer the building blocks for all other life. So it's actually the food source for a lot of different invertebrates, and then those invertebrates are the food source for a lot of different fish. But this one's really quite interesting. Take a look at this. So renunculus also traps a lot of sediment which is flowing down, which is good. It cleans and provides cleaner gravels down there, but a lot of this sediment which goes in here, when you shake this, do you see it coming out? Can you see that? A lot of that is the poop of the black fly larvae. This is actually an incredibly important relationship between the two species, because the renunculus has actually been able to make use of this poop as a type of fertilizer. Isn't that awesome? But renunculus is also important because where it forms, it stops the hyporheic flow. So this is the flow which goes underneath the bed of the river. So when you have renunculus forming, it slows the flow, which is pretty important when you've got, periods where the rivers could be drying out. And generally, when you've got a lot of renunculus, you've got a pretty healthy river, pretty healthy chalk stream. I'm seeing quite a few little pockets of it here, and also I'm seeing lots of fish swimming up and down. But what makes for a healthy and thriving river isn't just about what's happening in the water. It's got a lot to do with what's happening outside of the river, so in this kind of marginal and riparian habitat. So rivers, they need trees. One of the most iconic species here on the Itchen is the trout. This is a species which lives in trees. It doesn't live up in the branches of the trees, but it lives down in the submerged roots and the snags of fallen trees. It's within this woody debris that all the macro invertebrates thrive, so they act as feeding grounds for the fish, but also they're places for shelter and refuge. Now, at first I thought this fish was a log. It's not. It's a big fish. I think it's a big trout. It's just resting here in the shallows. So I have to admit, my fish ID isn't the best. I thought this was just a little trout having a nap, but nope. Turns out I was eyeball to eyeball with a pike, a classic ambush predator who was just waiting for something dumb enough to get close enough. But trees and woody material in rivers are also crucial to the movement and sorting of gravels. Wood in the system traps organic material, silt and fine sediments, and over time this builds up and changes the shape of the riverbed, creating riffles, pools and side channels. It's this diversity and complexity of flow which is fundamental to the river's health and resilience. And we so often focus on what we can see, the fish, the plants, the flow, but what really keeps a chalk stream alive is mostly invisible. Covering every pebble, log and leaf is a thin film of life, bacteria, fungi and algae, working together in complex microbial communities. These tiny organisms break down organic matter, recycle nutrients, and even help clean the water. They're quietly filtering, balancing, and feeding the entire ecosystem from the ground up. There is of course so much more to cover on this, and we will do on future chalk stream videos, but now I want to discuss the threats facing them. You know, these videos, while they are enjoyable to make and they are really important, they do take a little while to make. You know, this is my full-time job. It's full-time. I definitely work overtime on these things, but you know, I'm incredibly passionate about this because, you know, whether if it's a project or if it's stories like this one, these messages, they need to get out there, and Leave Curious is the platform to do that. So if you want to support Leave Curious, then I want to invite you to become a member over on Patreon. This isn't just the best way to support Leave Curious, but it's also the best way to engage with other members of the community and myself, but also get behind the scenes content. You know, I've got a real ambition to scale this, to cover all of these important stories and explore all of these beautiful wild spaces. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, you can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can use the link down in the description and in the comments of the video. Thank you. Let's get back to this story. So because of the geological conditions that allow these rivers to exist, it makes them one of the rarest habitats on Earth. You know, there's something around like 260 chalk streams globally, and around 220 of them are found here in England. These aren't just of international importance, they are of global importance. And of the 220 chalk streams which we have here in England, I think it's only around 10 of them which are in a near natural condition. That means that well over 90% of them are degraded. And the challenges facing chalk streams is just like that of any other river here in England. You know, pick your poison, whether if it's microplastics, raw sewage or agricultural runoff. Chalk streams are not exempt from this too. And not to mention, because of the pure nature of these rivers, they also experience heavy abstraction for drinking water too. And then, like all rivers, chalk streams also experience man-made barriers, so sluices, weirs, bridges. You know, these fundamentally stop the flow of sediment in rivers, and it just, you know, it's incredibly damaging. But like I said earlier on in the video, the most systemic, the most widespread and the most ongoing problem for our rivers, our chalk streams, is that of habitat loss and fragmentation. You know, we have been conditioned to look at a straight canalized river and not even question it. The shifting baseline syndrome. This underpins everything we talk about here at Leave Curious. But the amazing thing is, the really crucial thing is that we can begin to restore a lot of this damage which we've done. We can undo it, we can recreate nature, we can recreate these chalk streams. So just looking at these stems which are going into the water here, and there's some evidence here that these have been cut in the past. So it looks like they've been hinged in. So that's just where you cut a little bit and, you know, you partially leave it attached to the tree, but that introduces water back into the system. It looks like they've reinforced the path here with some pretty solid timber, but then they've just introduced some more sort of like twigs and sort of woody debris here. I think this is just to get some of the natural processes going again. So having the right amount of sunlight and shade coming through to the water is also really important. And it looks as though that a tree's just been felled here and it's really opened it up, and there's some light coming in here, because there is quite a lot of cover here, but you can see where that was cut there, and it's just opened it up and you've got some sunlight coming through. If you work in chalk stream restoration or any kind of river restoration, feel free to reach out. Information on how to do this is in the description. None of these restoration techniques can really get a foothold if we don't take it seriously. And recently there's been this new threat emerging to not just chalk streams but all UK habitats, and let's talk about that now. So this new threat which is facing our rivers is one which is pretty hard to see. It's a lot quieter. It's not one which is in the water, it's not one which is in the surrounding landscapes yet. This one is written in policy. A new planning reform bill is moving through the UK government, and if passed, it would mean the most significant rollback of environmental protections in decades. Till now, here in the UK, developers have had to go through something called the mitigation hierarchy, which is where you first avoid building on valuable habitats like chalk streams, and if you do have to build on them or near them, then you have to minimize the damage, and then you should look to restore, but then only as a last resort should you look to offset that damage and recreate whatever that habitat is elsewhere. But this new bill, it kind of scraps that whole process entirely. Under the new system, developers can pay a one-time nature restoration levy, and in return they're allowed to destroy woodlands, wetlands, and yes, even chalk streams. So once they've paid, they are legally entitled to disregard any ecological damages which take place. It's kind of like just putting money forward and moving the problem away into the future. You know, the idea is that we'll cough up some cash, and then hopefully one day in the future the equivalent habitat will be recreated. But the thing is, places like chalk streams, they can't be recreated elsewhere. And then the other mad thing which I read is that a lot of the developments that, like, under the new rules, they don't really require like heavy ecological surveys, so you can't exactly monitor what's being lost, so then, you know, we can then potentially recreate it somewhere else. It's just a total disregard for nature. And there's like another little insidious rule in here, which is that the bill states that the offsetting fee must not be high enough to make the development economically unviable. In other words, profit comes first. And you know, while all of this is done in the name of economic growth, we kind of have to ask the question, who is this growth for? I mean, surely, like, I'm a pragmatic person. I understand that the UK needs to continue to develop its infrastructure, its housing, because that is how society works now. But surely it shouldn't come at the cost of our most beautiful and natural spaces. In the description there's a petition which you can go and sign, and there's more information on this there as well. You know, habitats like this, they will have a future, but it's going to be down to us. It's going to be down to people that care about them and, you know, want to see them come back and do well. If you've enjoyed this video and you think it's worth supporting, then I encourage you to become a member over on Patreon. It really is the best way to support Leave Curious right now. That's linked on the screen here, and if you want to watch a video just like this one, that's here. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. Leave Curious.